Where you can.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
The time is 7:30. I call the February 20th meeting of Yardley Borough Council to order. Please stand for the pledge to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please. Manager Johnson?
Mr. Stump,
Present.
Mr. Finer,
Present.
Ms. Thompson,
Present.
Ms. Siegel-Morris, Ms. Scherer,
Present.
and Mr. Applebaum.
I'm here.
With 6 members present, we have a quorum. Moving on to community announcements, this is the portion of the meeting where members of council can make announcements about upcoming events in the community, and then we'll ask the public to do the same. Any community announcements this evening? Hearing none. Any from the public? Okay. Next is public comment. This is the portion of the meeting where members of the public can address council on matters not on the agenda. We ask that you come forward, state your name and address, and keep your comments to 3 minutes per topic. Any public comment this evening? Nice and easy. We will now consider the consent agenda dated February 20th, 2024. It includes approval of minutes dated February 6th, 2024, event permit Yardley Farmers Market 2024 for Buttonwood Park, event permit for Music Off Main 2024 season, also in Buttonwood Park, event permit for Vault Craft and Beer, May 4th, 2024, 19 West College Avenue, event permit Vault Beerfest, June 1st, 2024, 19 West College Avenue, event permit Vault Pig Roast, August 17th, 2024, 19 West College Avenue, event permit Vault Oktoberfest, October 5th, 2024, 19 West College Avenue, FEMA funded elevation 25 North Delaware Avenue, payment certificate number 3. Does any member of council wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Sorry.
Just the minutes, please.
Sure. Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda items B through H?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Motion was made by Councilperson Finer, seconded by Councilperson Siegel-Morris. Any discussion from council?
I was wondering, Madam President, if I noticed that Mr. Bernie's here. I was wondering if he could just give us a quick synopsis of the events that you are proposing. And are any of these new?
Sure. Come on up so everyone can hear you.
Sorry to put you on the spot, Scott.
Just have to tap it. There you go. Yep.
Three of them we've done before. So the Beerfest, the Oktoberfest, this will be our third, and the pig roast we did last year as well. The craft and craft brews is a new one. We're basically putting it out there to like very high, nicer craft groups. We actually posted that early because we needed to get the vendors in, at least interested. And we've gotten plenty of those. 15 so far in the last week and a half. And so that's just another kind of community event.
Well, thank you for everything you're doing and to help, build, momentum with our marketing of the town. I think that's great. Appreciate it.
Okay.
And you were asked to apply for events when you do them, and you're doing that. So just want to thank you for working with the borough.
I have a question.
Sure.
Yep.
I saw on the applications, I think on 3 of the events, it does say, pretty much says the same thing, I think, that it's a private property and council needs to approve due to zoning and hearing board decision. So I presume they denied it?
No, we had
Or what?
we
I don't-
received a variance for our restaurant to operate as a full restaurant at Smokehouse. And part of the variance is, even though it's private property, we need to come to council for approval for events that are outside.
All of them?
Yep.
Every time
yep,
you have one?
Yep.
Right, so, and have you done that before? They've done that before? Oh,
Yeah, they've done 3. The new one you said is the Craft and Beer Fest.
Yeah, so we did Oktoberfest 2 years ago, then Oktoberfest again last year. And then last year, we also added a Bucks County Brew Fest and a pig roast. And they were all sold out, pretty well attended. We get done, music is done by 5:30 at the latest. We stop serving outside early, and we start around noon, depending on the event.
Okay.
So,
Without getting into the state of mind of the zoning hearing board, the thinking is by applying through the event permit, the community is, and neighbors of the property are aware of when the event is taking place, and council is able to see the size is reasonable, as well as the time is not going too late into the evening for noise reasons.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Burney? All right, thank you.
No, do you want to turn it off?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. All right, any other questions or comments on items B through H? I'll call the question. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 6-0. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes dated February 6, 2024?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion was made by Councilperson Siegel Morris, seconded by Councilperson Scherer. Discussion from council? From the public? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions?
Aye.
Motion carries 501. Does anyone have any issues with the finance report dated February 20th, 2024? If no issues, it will be accepted. Okay, this is not a normally scheduled business meeting. This is one of our new working sessions, so we will be primarily focusing on 2 topics. The first session will be hosted by Public Safety on, I believe, 3 different topics?
2.5.
2.5 topics. I will turn the floor over to Councilperson Siegel Morris.
Good evening. We're going to discuss possibly putting together a process for residents of the borough to, what needs to be done if you would like to add a stop sign to a street or a crosswalk or possibly speed humps, as was most recently done on Breeze. So we're just going to discuss possibly posting something on the website that would outline that process for borough residents. And Chief and I looked into that, and I think our basic outline is wanting to have requests made to Borough Hall in writing. And we were also wondering, though, like if you were just a resident, and this, because this is a discussion, a resident on XYZ Street, and you decide you want a stop sign, do you need to garner more support from residents on the street? Or is it enough for just one person to request that, or for us to look into adding a stop sign? At what point do we initiate looking into adding a stop sign or crosswalk or a speed hump? Like what gets that ball rolling? Is it just the request of one person, which is fine, or do we need to have more people requesting that we add this?
So I think it was my understanding that when we started the process of new stop signs on Letchworth this past year, and as part of that, I think Manager Johnson and Chief Kelly drove around and looked at maybe other possible locations for stop signs. So if we could have, in the year 2024, a comprehensive review of where we have traffic calming measures and where we think possibly we might want to add them and make that part of our comprehensive plan that we're drafting this year, then at least we have, in 2024, this is what kind of made sense. This was our long-term goals. And then obviously things change. New houses could be built, or new traffic patterns could be created for some reason, in which we would have to determine maybe more new locations. But I think that the starting point before we get into like what how a resident could start the process would be, where do we, as informed members of council, as public safety, as public works, think that traffic calming is needed?
I think part of it is that, well, if it's a state-owned street, and I think even for a local-owned street, if I'm correct, Chief, is that they're going to want accident data on the street. And fortunately, knock on wood, we don't have a whole lot of accidents.
So what is the process? So I think that people are going too fast on my street. What happens next?
According to what I found and I'm no lawyer, but in Title 75, Section 6122, local authorities need to obtain the approval of the Department of Transportation prior to erecting any official traffic control device on a state-designated highway, except where department regulations provide otherwise. Local authorities shall obtain approval of the department prior to erecting any traffic signal, except in a municipality where the traffic engineer qualified in accordance with the department regulations. And it further goes on to say the department shall promulgate rules and regulations setting forth minimum standards and factors to be considered in determining whether approval shall be given from the department for the installation and maintenance of the official traffic control device. The factors shall include, but not be limited to, the volume of traffic and the number of accidents that occurred each of the 3 preceding years. So based on what I'm reading here, and I would definitely seek input from the solicitor, if we were going to meet just the provisions of 75, Section 6122, we would need both supporting crash data and a traffic study.
And the traffic study is the cost prohibitive piece, right?
Correct.
What is that ballpark usually?
I don't know. I know we had a quote for one recently. What was that, Paula?
For one location?
For one location.
But I think there is a distinction between a PennDOT, a state designated street versus a local street.
So the first part was we would have to get approval for the state, right, and then the latter portion was talking about on municipal streets, they must meet a standard requirement, and they suggest the standard requirement is volume of traffic and number of accidents, right?
And in 6122, it further goes on to say that the department may enter into an agreement with a local authority, transferring to them the authority to install official traffic control devices without the specific state approval, provided they conduct a traffic and engineering investigation which conform with the rules and regulations. So it says even if you apply for and receive permission to do it yourself, it's still got to be supported, according to this, by a traffic study.
So what was the last one that we installed, and what was the process? I guess the speed humps were the most recent, or did that count?
The speed humps were done during a paving project, and that was...
That's not a traffic control device, is it?
It may be.
Well,
Not
because I
sure.
think a stop sign and a traffic light is not the same as a traffic calming.
I could look it up in Title 75 and let you know for sure, but I know the solicitor was involved in that process with the speed hump, because that went through several meetings.
So maybe we go back and we pull that paper trail, see what was done there as a starting point, because I think, I mean, if we could figure out how to do this in the most cost-effective way, I mean, we're going to have limited data, right? As a small municipality, we're going to have we have very few accidents, so that is not a data point I would use to make this decision.
Oh, do you remember us doing a traffic study for the speed humps though? No, I don't either. Because again, it would have showed no accidents. I mean,
Yeah.
or very, very minimal, one if that. And we didn't put counters out. I don't remember putting car counters out.
Because it was a borough street, I think council gave the blessing to put them in.
Was that like community initiated?
That was community initiated, sure.
So did they do a petition? or-
Nope, they just
No?
came here.
Okay, okay.
We heard it a couple times. Yeah, yeah.
I think anyone who had walked down the street could
It became
concur
a
with that.
copy of
Yeah. Do we know, Chief Kelly, any other municipalities that have some sort of process that we could borrow?
I could definitely try and find out, but I'm sure the solicitor's office, I'll do my part with other PDs, but I'm sure the solicitor's office has been through this with other municipalities and probably could assist us with some type of boilerplate process, telling them what our preference is. Our preference is for least amount of resistance up here as possible, right? And then have them curtail our process to fit that. Because these traffic studies can be very, very prohibitive, especially in the absence of crash data.
Did we, I mean, Kim, you talked about what would trigger this. Perhaps we could do it informal, just observation to see if it really makes sense to move further. I don't know what you've discussed about what triggers this, but I'd certainly be interested. But I think that maybe an informal, observation might be wise before we do anything
I think
further.
anything has to be documented, though, right? That's the
But
So I
even
think
if it's
we have
informal, we can document it.
Yeah, we have a pattern in the last 2 years of 3 different requests from residents for traffic calming, and I think we currently don't have a standard process on how to decide whether to grant their request or not, and I think that would be helpful for this board as we're elected, there's going to be turnover, like we want consistency year over year in application.
Okay, and that's not covered under an ordinance, or is that something we should check?
Well, it sounded like from what Chief Kelly read, they recommend minimum standards or they require minimum standards. They recommend that the minimum standards are volume of traffic and accidents, but they're not really defined.
Okay.
There's room for interpretation there.
I agree with you on that, but when we speak about observation, everyone up here, I think, agrees that Letchworth and East College would benefit from additional stop signs. So observation supports that. Our experience supports that. The crash data does not, and we don't have a traffic study yet to see what the volume is. So that may be the best place to ask the solicitor why, again, I'm not completely understanding why we need a traffic study if we know all of this about our town.
And also,
Well, I guess,
Especially to get to
and my question would be, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump.
well, just in terms of, I'm just thinking logically, throughout the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, you have a lot of towns that have very low population, but there are intersections where you have to have stop signs, because it might be that only twice a day cars pass through there, but if they pass at the same time, you're going to have,
And in this particular
There
case, it was
must
because of
be-
school.
Yeah, so that's another scenario, because it's a safe school area, but there must be some mechanism for that. We have to figure out what that is, because the studies are, every time we've done them, they cost a lot of money.
Right.
And they frequently result, in what I've seen, in this issue of there's not enough volume to justify blah, blah, blah. But
That's exactly
there's
what my
also
last question was going to
there's
be.
common sense, but no volume. So we've got to figure out, and I think it's a question, I don't think we're going to figure out
Right.
here, but what is the mechanism that those other municipalities are using to institute stop signs and whatever else they do?
So, but that's my last question or point, and that is, we obviously all have seen that it's a good location to put a stop sign, but if there's no accidents and the volume's low, but we know that twice a day a bus comes to pick up children and at the end of the day drops off children, we know that's a dangerous, situation and probably warrants this. So I don't know. Again, that's just not a question, that's more of a point.
So my recommended next step would be that we throw this back at the solicitor and find out what exactly prompts a study according to his interpretation of 6122, what we could get away with doing without a study when our observations are consistently across the boards that we all agree, and then I could take that data and we could make some further recommendations on this one pager. But I think as it exists today, if a study is our barrier, then we need to find out if there's any exceptions to that.
And then based on response, kind of what our contemporaries in size of boroughs are doing, if they have anything like this on their website that's downloadable.
I think both Paul and I can reach out for our counterparts in other boroughs and definitely find that out.
Sounds good? Okay.
The next item we wanted to discuss was sightlines in view of the discussion of Delaware Avenue in the fall. However, I think that that issue that we discussed in the fall wasn't really a sightline issue, but more of the amount of room that street had to allow the turning of in and out of cars, and whether the rocks on that road or on that yard were somehow impeding that, but I don't think they were impeding the view of traffic.
Not that house, but it was the neighbor on the
Oh,
other
the neighbor
side
on the
of the
side.
street.
Okay.
That's what Pando, we would say, we would look at ends of streets for sightline
Okay.
issues.
So looking at that and looking at a map of the borough, if you look at the main roads in Borough, Main, Afton, and Delaware Avenue, intersecting those three main roads, we have 24 intersections. That's not, and not including Main and Afton, not including Afton and Delaware. So we have 24 intersections that intersect with those three roads. Again, obviously, the Federal Highway Administration recommends looking at crash data. Fortunately, we don't have any intersections with an inordinate amount of accidents. I mean, just to like sort out, like if you were just going to go measure sightlines, it's going to take you a little while to measure sightlines for 24 intersections. On Delaware Avenue, there's 8, I think 4 on either side of Afton. So the official way of measuring a sightline is like going 15 feet back from the major road and having someone measure the appropriate amount of distance to the right and to the left based on the FHA. Okay, I now can't see. Which is on a 25-mile-an-hour road, 280 feet on either side of the stopped car from the minor road, or on Delaware Avenue, that would be 390 feet. So, I mean, just guesstimating, if you picture some of our intersections in your head, we don't have that. And there's a lot of buildings in the way, there's just no way we're gonna clear that. Do we have intersections that have bushes and hedges? Yes. Do we have anything on the books that prohibits that at this point? Not really. The only thing I found, and I think it only pertains to development and planning, was chapter 22-509. And we do have it on the books, a definition of a clear sight triangle. And they do stipulate that the line of sight should be 50 feet, which is much smaller than what is prescribed by the FHWA. However, as Wes pointed out, I don't know how old this is, when it was instituted, and I think that it's only for planning and development, so I don't know if it applies to our sightlines. So we could put an ordinance on the books. However, would that help us fix anything?
I don't think we need to over-engineer it. I think it just, during growing season in the spring, when hedges are leafy and they're getting bigger, could we do like a lighter touch? It doesn't have to be a cease and desist letter, but like, we could have like a safe sightlines campaign. We could put something in the newsletter like, hey, if you live on the corner or on an intersection, please make sure your hedges are not impeding driver's vision. And then if we're still seeing issues, we could send a nice letter. We could go and knock on their doors like it's a neighborly thing, like, hey, can you trim your hedges out front? Because I definitely think we have some intersections where we have this problem. And I think sending a letter from our solicitor would probably not be the way to
Not a
go
light
with this.
touch.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the friendly notice idea sounds very Yardley to me, and because I don't think people want to be in a situation where there was a crash that was caused by them after they received a notice, and then they are liable for the outcome.
But in order for us to tell them that they're blocking the sightline, we have to know that they're blocking the sightline. So then we need someone to measure the
Well,
sightline.
we could do that.
We could say that, I mean, if observationally it looks,
Right.
because I think there's a uniqueness to this, especially being a small, quirky borough. Sometimes the sight lines are blocked because the buildings are just in the way, you know? And, right, like,
Especially on this side of like College and Letchworth.
Right.
In Maine, there's just, you can't.
there's nothing new. So, but if we kind of took it down, I mean, a standard would be great. If we don't have a standard, we just took it down a notch and let people know it appears that the sight lines are limited. Could you cut your hedges? It's also true for people whose growth goes over sidewalks or in front of
Right,
signs
so,
or,
yeah, according to the FHWA, obstructions are, bushes, hedges, trees, signs, parked vehicles, crops, which of course we do not have in Yardley, that I'm aware of, things like that. So it could be any number of things blocking the view, but also the view doesn't just apply to the person coming into the major road. It's the traffic on the major road needs to be able to see the person approaching that road. This is,
Yeah, and I remember we had a big issue across from the train station like 3 years ago, and there's a big uproar on social media. And then I think Paula went and knocked on their door, and they're like, sure, we'll trim them. So, I just think, the point of this is, it should be, if not annual, every other year, we just, do a drive around, see where there might be issues, and let people know, and also sidewalks is another point, making sure people can walk on the sidewalk safely.
But if there's nothing, I'm just asking, if there's nothing on the books requiring them to do this, we don't have an ordinance about, and actually Googling that, and I didn't find very many, boroughs or towns in Pennsylvania that have an ordinance about obstructed views. So I don't know, can we force someone to cut their hedges down? I'm just asking.
I would go by the Pareto principle, 80-20, 80% of the people are going to do it, 20% are going to just not do it. But if we can get to the 80% with an occasional drive around and a nice little friendly notice, would you kindly do this? Maybe we kind of, eliminate most of the problem.
Yeah, I can't tell you that what you read doesn't apply until I see everything grow in the spring. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, no.
I can't
I'm
picture
sure.
what that even means until I go out there with a measuring tape and
Well, you need a
measure
little
stuff.
wheelie thing.
Yeah.
That's a technical term.
Yeah.
Measuring?
So let's plan to at least try to figure out where the problem areas are in the spring, and then we'll go from there, obviously, in, checking in with the solicitor, making sure we're not sending anything we shouldn't, but I think everyone would support safe driving in the borough, so.
I just wanted to touch upon one quick thing. Kim, you mentioned the sidewalks, but don't we have sidewalk, if there's a divot or a broken cement, isn't there something on the books for that, Wes?
Yes, and there is also something as far as if a tree is growing over top, there has to be a certain height distance, and I do use that from time to time.
And I think that Wes has told me in the past that, so if a sidewalk is in need of repair, sometimes the borough has waited till the sale of the property so the seller and the buyer can split the cost of repairing sidewalks, since that's a little pricey, right? Or is that not a thing anymore?
Try not to go too heavy-handed with that because of the expense, unless there is, serious deficiencies. Then we obviously have to take care of them. But if we can put a reminder out there, hey, this needs, because of the expense, it is very expensive.
Yes, we know that.
There was a movement, and Chris, maybe, do you think it was about 23, 24 years ago, where it was Boucher and James went to every sidewalk and took pictures of every issue. And then I sat down and sent letters to each one of these residents, but it was a huge expense for them, like Wes said. It was a lot, but we do have in our ordinances that you have to maintain and upkeep your sidewalks. So we have the,
So,
We didn't get a super effective take-up on people making repairs, some did,
Right.
some didn't. And
Right.
that's why a lot of municipalities tie it to the sale of the property. Because it's just an easier time to police it.
right,
It doesn't, to go out, I think we talked about, Wes, I think you were involved in it too, to go out and send letters to 60% of a community at one time
it was
is
huge.
daunting. Yeah, so in order to kind of just keep a rolling monitor system of them,
Right.
a lot of municipalities tie it to when you sell your property.
and Wes does capture a lot of them during the
It is
sales.
part of the use occupancy, sidewalk inspections, which includes the curb. And I had a pretty good success rate of getting repairs done at that time.
It's a much more manageable way of keeping it out.
It is, unless there's something serious.
Right.
Right, if there's an obvious trip hazard or something, then we'll send something to the property owner and say, hey, this is a potential hazard for people tripping. And usually they jump right on it and take care of it.
So do you go around looking for things like this, or is there a process for that, or do you respond, you do go look for it? So, and then the other thing is that, people can contact you and say, hey, I noticed X, Y, Z. Is there like a,
We
do
have
you
an
get,
official complaint form on the website. and
okay.
things like
And
that.
do you get people, do they know they can do that, or do you ever get?
Oh, they know they can.
Careful where you go here.
Well, like, for example, there's near me is a sidewalk with hedges growing over it, and the owners probably they're nice people, they probably don't realize that if someone's on a bike or something, or it essentially pushes them towards the road.
Usually the person
what's the
whose
mechanism?
home it is, they don't know because
don't know.
they're not outside on the sidewalk in
Yeah.
front of their house.
Right, and it creates like a, blind driveway situation,
Yeah.
how would a person go about that? Would they file a complaint form?
There's a complaint form, yeah.
They can just email me or call me, too.
Yeah. No, I'm not
do
saying
get
it for
these,
me,
though.
I'm
We
saying
do
it for.
get these,
You do
though.
get, okay, that's
The
good,
complaint forms.
all right.
Compliment forms?
You have a complaint box.
I like that.
Compliment forms?
Yes, I like that.
We should have those. Sure. Why not?
All right, sounds good. I just sent everybody a calendar invite for April 30th to discuss sightlines.
Okay. And our third piece of our public safety agenda tonight was parking in the borough, which I think Wes hasn't updated.
Actually, we have a pretty good map on file now that needs a minor revision. I just don't have the ability to do it. I've tried, and it's nothing that I would share. My artistic abilities are lacking. And the only thing we really need to add to it for the update is the parking lot behind the vault, which is 2-hour public parking.
Okay.
And I have, if you haven't seen this, you might have to share.
Is this the same map from,
It is.
you know what I'm talking about? Yeah.
It's the same way.
So you said behind the vault's not on here. How many spots is that?
I don't know
Include
that.
but not limited.
Okay.
We don't own the lot,
You can be.
so, but there is an agreement with the property owner, there's 2-hour public parking.
I have a question. So with the 2-hour time limit, I think there's like 1 or 2 signs on Main Street up by the intersection that say 1-hour parking, or they did. Are they still there? Like up by Crissette, maybe?
I'm pretty sure they are.
So are
They
there
are.
1 or 2?
They wouldn't be as far as Percent.
Okay.
That's at the traffic light. I would be back closer to Dreyfus.
So is that still 1?
I think that was more for quick retail,
Okay.
pick up and get out. Nobody staying long term.
Nobody.
You don't have the original
No.
document?
And if I did, I could update it probably. Right?
We get, I think the base is just something from GIS, it looks like.
Oh, okay.
And then we could do a new one, right? So I think a couple of things here, like, yes, let's make sure it's updated, but then how do we advertise this? Because this is a constant topic on social media.
We put this on the website.
On the website, but is that,
Make it printable. so that
yeah,
people
unless
can
we have good Google search indexing and good rankings, this is
I'm
not
sure the
gonna.
community outreach would love it. Joe.
Yeah,
Is there a way that we can make this more aesthetically pleasing and not as hard to read? I mean, I know.
Colors?
I mean, can I get one of the graphic designers on my team to make us a new one, and I'll just pay them since we don't have any money?
I move that.
I
we
don't need
got
to know
that.
how.
Am I allowed to do that?
We don't need to know how you do it, but yeah, if
Okay.
you
I mean, I
wanna
have a
make
graphic
this-
designer that owes me some favors, so.
But I'm even thinking, like, if I have never been here before, I know it's a map.
I live here and this is confusing.
This is confusing, right?
But you could push that into your like GPS and this should tell you.
If we could make
know we
it
had
like
the
a little
lakes.
easier, like put some landmarks in, like the only landmark is post office. Well, that's not a landmark for most people.
I mean,
so-
every building is on here and there's numbers that I guess correspond to what they are,
Yeah,
but like,
could we
you
make
know
it
those-
like
Yeah.
like
could it say Starbucks, Vault,
You know those
Mall
like,
Ops,
you know those like
Yardley
nice
Pizza?
tourist maps they have in
Yeah.
places like New Hope,
Wait,
and they
I
have all the
don't know.
little
So
places on them?
maybe on that map, since you're having somebody redo it, like have like more like accessible parking, like so people with mobility issues know where it's more amenable for them to park.
where there's
Yeah, handicap
ADA parking.
Yeah, there's no symbol. But the other thing is that I think 90+% of the people are not going to look at this before they come to the borough. They're going to
Unless we
drive.
market it all over social media, like
Market it.
spam it.
But also, maybe we could have a
Just
consistent.
when people complain about
a
parking,
consistent,
I will
like-
drop it. I'll create multiple Facebook profiles
Yeah.
to comment multiple times.
But you know,
I'm
like
kidding.
our public parking sign is like hard to kind of, I think people look for a P in the round, like the symbol and an arrow.
Well, it's like those pictures I took this past week on where the Yardley mural is. There is a sign advertising the liquor store, and it says Buttonwood Park Public Parking. Myself on foot, standing in front of the vault, I could not read it across the street, and that's without being in a car. When you're in a car, you can't read that sign. Now, I don't necessarily know where we would put a sign. It's like, do we hang a sign from the air where there's in front of the vault, there's that giant arm that says, straight and left turn. Do we hang something from there that says public parking here? Do we put a sign up on the sidewalk? I mean, that's where it could get a little,
I just believe that to be sign pollution, but.
I mean, I don't disagree with that.
Sign pollution, but there's also like a standard practice.
You need to have signs because people are driving around, not knowing.
They're
where-
driving around.
Well, I
not knowing
agree,
the parking.
but,
Until you go into where Vince's is and there's somebody there telling you you can't park there.
well, he could direct you.
You know, it would be more
I'm not going to get involved in that.
friendly to,
They don't
out-
have to.
out of town. like-
Yeah.
So let me
They
say,
don't have to be like obnoxious signs. They can be
No.
nice signs,
Right.
like what people expect in the, in
I
the,
agree.
it could literally be a P with an arrow,
The
and
P with
people
an
know what
arrow.
that means.
Yeah.
Now, when I turned left, walking in by the Yardley mural, there were two cars greeting me going the wrong way, both from New Jersey. Not to hate on New Jersey, but I think it illustrates the point that it is confusing if you're not from here. I've even had the thought before. I haven't said it at a meeting, but I've said it in one-on-one conversations. There almost needs to be down past that building, painted on the road. Do not enter.
No, I agree with you.
It's
I
worn
think
off a little.
it's worn off and.
There's arrows, but I'm saying like
People
a
do it
do
all the
not
time.
enter on the road.
Well, 2 weeks ago at the farmer's market when I was outside, they
Yeah.
were coming out there and they were coming out from in between the refillery and the Pretty Bird. Somebody was coming out and somebody was trying to go in. So the in person was having to back out onto Main Street and I was like,
But that's,
Is there a do not enter sign there?
but isn't that street two-way? That alley is two-way. I'm talking about next to the Yardley mural. That is a one-way in only. And that's actually how the car crashed into the railing of the vault, was they were trying to go out and there were
wrong way.
limited sight lines. When we had the ribbon cutting and,
Best ribbon cut
But
ever.
I agree what you're saying is the one over by, what is it, by the refillery.
right,
Mm-hmm.
That really should only be one way. You can't fit two cars in there. And if one's halfway in and somebody else is trying to come out, there's a problem. It should only be one way. It's not really wide enough for two cars.
but who would,
That's the other, that's
Not
the other
the,
side. And then there's the one with the mural side, is it? That's,
I know what you're saying.
No, no, we're
You're
just
saying
clarifying,
you
that's
have
all.
to-
but Caroline, isn't that alley two-way by the refillery? It is. I mean, I go out that alley all the time and I have never met another car
I think
there.
signage, one ways, I think the Kramer's parking lot is an issue too with people coming out the wrong way. That's, I feel like, another conversation, a good conversation that we should have. Just trying to pull people back to the map because we do have another thing on the agenda this evening. I noticed that some people have added permanent pins, public pins to Google Maps in Yardley, like Yardley Farmers Market is on here now and they never used to be. How hard, is it possible that we mark entire parking lots, so if somebody types in public parking near me, they come up on Google Maps? Like that's where everybody goes to look for things, right?
Not a bad idea.
I don't
We
know
could
how to
give
do
it
that,
a
but I know
name.
it's
Could someone-
possible.
We can give it a
Community and
name.
Economic Development look into that, the
Oh,
feasibility of
I'm
doing
sorry,
that?
I have to
Lot one.
take some notes.
That's you down here, sorry.
Yeah, that's why when I
But
woke
you got
up.
it, no?
Community economic development? No.
You want to, yes, I
David.
can look into that, no problem.
We need some SEO.
David, I can, if you need to, I can connect you with some, there are some people in town that have put Google Pin locations at their residences, like to
Okay.
be funny. So I could connect you with
That was
those
me.
people and they could probably tell you how they did it. Or you could find out by Googling.
And we would want somebody from the staff, or somebody, on
Right.
staff to do the pin. Yeah,
You don't just want to get a random person and no one knows who it is and then they move.
David Applebaum's pin. All right, so it sounds like
So I'm working on this map.
council, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, Councilperson Stump's working on the map. We're going to look into Google Pins on community economic development with Councilperson Applebaum.
One question that I have, ADA parking was mentioned, just where is that? Do we know where that is, or is it just in every lot?
Random,
Okay,
random.
To walk around.
so that's where I got to do some more running around town, I guess. That's good.
Random, like the,
Parking lot.
in the same lot, are there like ADA and non-ADA spots?
Yes.
Because there's some behind
You
the
mean like
vault,
this-
there's some by Vince's in there.
Oh, you mean like the, yeah,
They're
Behind Pretty Bird, there's a.
They're around and
But we're not putting private parking lots on this.
No, but the one behind Vault is 2 hour now. That's what we're at.
Right, correct.
Yeah, so.
But we're not putting like behind Pretty Bird or in the Yardley Shopping Center since those are private lots.
Right.
All right, sounds like a plan. I think that's going to be excellent. Anything else on any of these three public safety topics? Parking sightlines or adding traffic calming measures?
This one is confusing, but it's
All right, let's move on. Thank you, Mr. Forker, for joining us this evening. Let's move on to Public Works.
Oh, my goodness, yes.
You might want to turn the mic on too.
Testing. Okay. Well, it's nice to finally do a work session where we actually can think about the future instead of the immediate issues in front of us. So first, I just want to thank Matt Ross here, from supervisor from LMT. That's exciting. We don't usually come to each other's meetings, so I think we owe you one, and we will do that too. Thanks for being here. And Bob Cummings, who created the Walkable Yardley group. Thank you for being able to come here tonight. So what we're going to do
And
is,
hold on, not to steal your thunder, but the first few people who come to a working session this year get a 2023 Harvest Day T-shirt. So I will drop those off to you. Congratulations, Wes. You get one too.
all right.
Wow.
All right, so what we're going to focus on is a bird's eye view of what we want to accomplish in public works. And the three areas we're looking at is walkability, safe crossings, and calming traffic. So there's overlap with what we spoke about before. And maximizing opportunities to access and enjoy the beautiful outdoors of Yardley. Okay, I'm pointing this way, and down is forward, right? Down is forward. Okay. All right, here is our 1 square mile borough. And I'm encouraging us to have a vision and think positively. We want to create an actionable plan or vision that will align with creating a comprehensive plan. So it fits right in with what we're working on for the 2024 comprehensive plan. Now, often when you talk about projects, what people say is, well, we don't have the money, or it takes 10 years to put in a sidewalk. So I understand that, very much so. We don't have a lot of money. But what we do have is we have an ambitious group, and I think between David, Jared, and me on Public Works and the rest of council, this is very much a can-do council. And I think if we have an idea of what we want to do, we will be able to find the money. There are lots of grant sources. We've had luck with grants recently. And the other part to it is that we have a relationship with Lower Makefield, and we can work together with them. The other thing that we hear is, which also came up today, PennDOT won't let us do X, whatever that is. And I think PennDOT is a very bureaucratic organization, but there are ways to get things done. And a good example is one person who lives on my street, on North Main Street, single-handedly was able to get the speed limit lowered from 35 to 25 after everybody said it couldn't be done. So I think we have to know what we want to do and figure out how to do it. I'll quickly just review some of our existing major projects because we want to understand where we are with those. Yardley Bridge, I had a conversation today with the engineer. The contractor is just waiting for the fill. I guess fill is not that easy to find in winter, so it looks like it's going to be pushed into March. As soon as they get that fill, we're going to have it scheduled. That'll take about a week to complete the grading around the Pico lot. The Pico lot and Future Yardley Trailhead, I have not heard anything for a while now, since December, waiting for the surveys to be done by Pico. Paul, have you heard anything, or do you know if there's been any contact? They finished the surveys. Oh, that's good. Okay. Okay.
I think that's what Andrew said last time he was here.
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
So it's just waiting.
Yeah, it's a very, very slow process when you do business with a utility, but it's moving, so that's all right. We're probably not that high on the list of priorities. And the North Main Street Sidewalk Phase 3. And for that one, we'll talk more about that one in a little bit, but we do have a grant that we received, but it only covers about a third of it. So we've got to figure out what we want to do. And one of the things to look at, which I asked Pat to do, and I don't know if he's spoken to you about it, but to check if that grant is extendable, and if they're okay with extending that. If they're not okay with extending that, then we'll use the grant to do whatever portion we can do, instead of waiting for more grants to come in. We have 2 grants out right now. Hopefully one of those or both will come through.
Sorry, Ms. Ori, just quickly on the Yardley Bridge, just a reminder, since it may go a little bit longer than we expected. I know that our Council President reminded us that it's very important not to attempt to cross it until it's officially open.
Right, this is one of these situations where you can put all the snow fencing and the signs and all the things you can do, and the longer you have something in that condition, the more people will start crossing it and get used to doing it, and then you put the thing back up, it's down by the next day. So we have to keep putting it up and do our best, but we ask the community to please be patient. Okay. So now, we're going to talk about 3 major goals today. One is closing the gaps. And we're really actually on the verge, and when I say gaps, I mean the gaps in infrastructure, and I'll show you what I mean in a moment. We're actually on the verge of closing a few small gaps that I think is, like, in many ways, low-hanging fruit. They're not necessarily easy, but because of the payback, the reward of closing those gaps, I consider them low-hanging fruit. And closing those gaps would be transformative for residents in Yardley because it extends the direction that you can walk around in, whether you're walking a dog, walking with your kids, whatever, safely. It also means that, like, kids, for example, could go and walk and visit their friends or go to the library or things that kids do, be it that right now it's too dangerous for them to do that, or they do it anyway on the street. It means less driving, right? Because if people are more connected, they don't have to drive as much. There's less traffic, less noise, less pollution, and more access to enjoying the outdoors in the center of town. It's good for local business because when people can walk into town, they spend money in town, and it's safer for everyone. So let's take a look at that. What I did is I put in, this is a walking map. So I put in Main and Afton, so basically 1 South Main Street, and I put in where can you walk to within 15 minutes of Main and Afton? And so what we have here is, it's a bit small, but this is the railroad right here. This is South Main Street, West Afton. So University is right there, so it's actually past that. And North Main, that's the Dolington-Taylorsville North Main intersection. So that's all within a 15-minute walk. It's almost the entire borough. If you extend that to a 30-minute walk, you actually get all the way up to the new Scudder Falls Bridge and that whole area. Mm-hmm. you get out here into, sorry, it's so blurry, but you're almost at that, you're basically at the edge of the lower Makefield, the library and all the kind of tennis courts and stuff. It's right around there. And then if you went even further, 45 minutes, it's kind of amazing to me how far you can get. 45 minutes of walking, that's only like just a bit over 2 miles at typical walking speed. And then finally, just for fun, 60 minutes you can actually walk across the Scudder Falls Bridge and
To Trent.
yeah. So it is amazing, and here's the issue, is this, where the sidewalk ends. So you might take a walk on Afton and find and by the way, thank you, Jared, for going out and scouting and taking pictures. Jared took 295 pictures to kind of demonstrate some of these.
Well, you didn't have to tell anybody I have a problem. I mean,
Yeah. I know, just downloading them was a
How many
lengthy.
did you use? No, just kidding.
all 295 of them
yeah.
are in here, David.
I think it was a goal to be like 295 to match the road. But yeah, so, that's obviously a problem. And it's very disappointing when you walk with your kids or you have a stroller or you're on a bike or something and you hit that. And this is coming down Dolington. So actually, there is a sidewalk that goes up to this point, and this is just about where the borough line is. And so you can see North Main Street right down there. But when you get there, you're stuck. And this is actually on Reading, by the train station. So I think that's actually a relatively new sidewalk, but it's just another example of what it feels like to walk and hit a dead end. So we're going to focus on 3 important areas, the low-hanging fruit. So one is completing the North Main Street sidewalk as planned. 2, alongside that, really it should be part of the same project, is this little smidgen of an addition. Actually, I think you can use this light here. Yeah, it doesn't work.
It absorbs the, yeah, you can't do it.
Isn't it? Yeah, all right. So I'll just use it like this. So this little part, it's so small, it's kind of amazing. And then we already have it in the most recent North Main Street sidewalk plan, a crosswalk to cross right here. That intersection is a difficult intersection to cross. I'll talk about that in a moment. The other part that's interesting about this is that there's the possibility, if Lower Makefield decides to keep going, is that this would connect to something that would keep going all the way to eventually connect to the Woodside Road, which is actually a multi-use trail, and then it goes down and connects to the canal over there. So, there's a lot of potential for that. And then the other one that people have been asking about is this one, and Bob, who's here, started the Walkable Yardley group, and within one day you got what, like 300 something people join it. How many are there? So this is something when people respond, and we live in a small community, so when people respond like that to me, I'm like, yeah, I'm not the only one thinking this. We all thought we were the only ones thinking it, and turns out everybody's thinking the same thing. There's already a sidewalk here where you see the green, so that connects you up to, everything else. So it's just this segment, this red segment, that's missing. And there's been discussion, there's previous work and how to do that, but the idea is that we would work together with Lower Makefield and figure out funding source and get support from our representatives to get a grant and close that gap. And actually that gap would connect thousands of people to Yardley, which is kind of amazing. Any questions?
No, but I think you have created some of the demonstratives for our grant applications. These are excellent.
Great.
This could be really excellent for economic impact of the town as well, because
Yeah.
you know, if you have to make a decision between driving or walking, now you can say, well, I'm going to walk into town.
Yeah.
Spending more time in town because they had to walk there.
Right.
I think this is great.
Yeah, I think that what amazes me is how much is within a short walkable distance, especially if you have a kid, you want to go for a longer walk, or if you have a dog or something, and you know.
On that point, I did that a few Saturdays ago. I was parenting solo while Austin was away, and I needed to get out of the house, and so I took my 2-year-old and my dog, and we literally walked to New Jersey. It's exactly 2 miles from Maine and Afton to the New Jersey line on the Scudder's Falls Bridge, and you couldn't do that when I moved to Yardley 7 years ago.
Yeah, that's a nice trip also. All right. And actually, you know, who knows, when you make those connections, you get people who live on that side that say, hey, let me walk to Yardley.
My wife grew up there. If only it had been there back when we were dating, I could have walked to her house.
And if we're going to have local businesses that rely on people in town, you know, as opposed to like chain businesses or something, it helps to have people who come to town and, you know, buy their lunch or something. Okay, so this is just showing you North Main. So the sidewalk is planned to go on the left side there. And great picture, Jared.
What direction are we looking in?
We're looking south.
Or south, thank
Yeah. And this is again Dolington. I wanted to point this one out because I wanted you to see where it interacts with North Main and where we could. So the sidewalk would continue from where you saw where that ends, keep going to the corner where that street sign is, and then you could have a crosswalk right there connecting to the North Main sidewalk.
And what municipality is this in?
That's the borough, yeah.
Yeah, there's 4 houses on Dolington between Orchard Hill and, well, this is where it gets a little dicey. The 4 houses between Main Street and Ludlow, the properties are split. So there's, I think, 4 or 5
Yeah.
houses. The
Go
houses
back.
themselves are in Yardley Borough. However, the front part of the property facing Dolington, I think, is in Lower Makefield.
The intersection is actually
See, there's the borough line.
on this side of the line.
So it's to the left, right outside that little
The
sliver.
sidewalk goes to the borough line.
Correct.
The sidewalk is in Lower Makefield going to the borough line. So
Wait.
it ends at the borough
The
line.
sidewalk ends at the, right, the sidewalk ends right, literally, I had checked it, as long as I imagine this is from the county. It ends right there. So, you know,
Makes sense.
Lower Bayfield did its job, yeah. It's not actually a sidewalk, it's a bike path. A bike, multi-use path, right.
Right, because it's
Sorry.
extra wide.
Distinction, right, it's wider and it's asphalt, and probably cheaper to install, yeah. It's like, I filed that under no-brainer, it's like a, you know, not a very large distance. Okay, let me just get back to where we were here.
So, down in Dolington,
Right,
that's a bike path right there.
that is, well, it's considered a multi-use path, so it's a certain standard, and it, yeah.
You'd kind of have to do the same thing, because if you
You'd-
put a
you'd
sidewalk
wanna-
in there, that would
Yeah.
stand out as very odd looking.
Yeah, I think you would just continue that to the end.
Because if we have the
Yeah,
concrete sidewalk in phase 3, that's on the other side
mean,
of the road.
this
You
is-
could have a concrete sidewalk connecting to a multi-use.
Yeah, well, because that's on this side, and then
Right.
this side. But the thing that's nice here, there's already a curb here. I mean, it's really, this is a cakewalk.
And according to the county, that corner, actually the entire corner, including where the Welcome to Yardley sign is actually owned by the Orchard Hill Homeowners Association. So we don't have to deal with private property right-of-ways. I would think they would give us the green light. I don't know how all that works, but I would think they would want a sidewalk in there.
Churchill
Yeah.
property owner?
What's that?
Just the poles.
Yeah, the poles, you could, yeah, we could figure that.
Right.
It's okay, so maybe a little bit less than a cakewalk, but relatively speaking with what we've dealt with,
Yeah, we
you
do.
know, I think pretty simple. Okay, so then, and then you would cross there, and it's just so you have a view of that intersection. It's a really big intersection. There's been discussion of doing something with that. That's for a later conversation, but,
And you said a crosswalk we're getting ahead of ourselves here, but I would be concerned about the
This-
safety of a crosswalk
That's a
there.
Yeah.
dicey area.
People are going 50 coming
Yeah.
in there.
And
but
because
if you don't have it, they cross without.
traffic,
Well, no. I mean, I would maybe want something more like flashing.
Oh, yeah, and that has to be looked at, and that's why I say that actually the whole intersection is something that should be reviewed, because it's really kind of like it's a dangerous intersection. It's too much road
For
for
crossing, I would,
what's there.
traffic light would be better, because at least you would get
Yeah.
the little flashing thing that would let you know for sure it's safe to walk.
Ori, didn't we talk,
That's a,
and Ori and I even talked,
speed limit only goes down right there. So they're moving when they come up.
There's been talk of doing various beacons there. There's been talk of doing a roundabout there. There was like there could be island. There's a lot of possibilities. Let's not get
yeah.
lost in that one, but that is something that needs to be looked at. Okay, so here we have.
Which that would need to be trimmed as well
This
if
is
we.
the Afton one, along with the example of, what happens when you have overhang blocking a sidewalk that actually ends just shortly
If you're
afterwards.
shorter than me, you can get under it. Say there, Thank you. Didn't know you were going to put that one in there.
I just thought it was funny. A little bit of comic relief.
And I'm only 5'8", so if you're taller than 5'8", you're really in trouble.
It looks like you're holding up the whole tree. All right, and this is going down Afton, and we'd have to see which side to put that on, but most likely the other side.
That would be the north side?
Yeah, but we'd have to see, because the look over, it's gone. Again, I don't, one more thing to look at here is, here's another example of,
What's that?
growth. I wonder if we could just cut that if we see it, instead of like sending a message. Can we just cut it?
Some property owners for that.
Yeah. You wouldn't want to just like clip it? Okay.
Want me to come to your house?
I don't know.
He probably wouldn't mind.
I mean, I recently met the people who live there. I could, we talked about mentioning it in a friendly way. That's actually my dog's vet that lives there. She's going in on Thursday. I could even potentially show them that picture. And
Yeah, I just think people don't see it. They get used to
they
it.
said anything they can do to help, they want to
Great.
help. So
Since
Okay.
you're bringing that up, also, just bring it back for a second, Ori.
Yeah.
Those signs, how often do they get replaced, Wes, if you know the answer? Because obviously that one, the reflective material doesn't look too good.
It's from 1682. That's
Okay, that's why I said I wasn't sure if you knew.
cool.
Is it borough where they're placing them, or?
Is it state because it's state highway? I'm sorry, I just,
But even if it is a state, like, it would initiate it from here. We would initiate that. I'm sure they wouldn't have any.
Do we have like a contact at PennDOT that we can ask questions like that? Can the Public Works Committee talk to that contact? If you could send that to me, that'd be great. That might be helpful for us. Sometimes we have questions. All right, and this is just, again, showing the kind of the path that one side people walk on, right? They walk on this side, that side. I don't know, either one. We've seen both. There was one picture
did you
you
include
posted.
that picture where there were both people? I
did
think I
not
sent you that
find
one.
that in the
It's
ones you
dangerous
sent
either
me,
way.
but you posted a great
Right.
picture. with-
So there was a
on
group
both
of
sides.
teenagers walking on the south side, which is the right side of that photo, and then there was a guy running on the north side, which fortunately both people were walking correctly, facing traffic. And there were actually cars meeting at the same time as all of this was happening.
So you already have traffic going up and down, pedestrian and bike traffic going up and down. And what's interesting is on North Main, when they added the sidewalk, I've been surprised at how often I see people using it. I would estimate like 10 times as many people use it when there's actually a sidewalk. So, yeah, because they,
And it should also be noted too, I mean, so right there, the speed limit is still 40 miles an hour. The 25 sign is in front when you get closer to look
I
over.
see it, it's really hard to see in this picture.
there's a warning, speed limit 25 ahead.
Well, that's the one that's overgrown.
That's that one.
Yeah.
So if you were looking at putting a sidewalk in either side, there's really, on the right, I don't see enough room to put one in. And I-
This is brush. This could be
That's the left.
cut, yeah.
No, my left.
Right, yeah, the right, I agree with you.
My
I,
left and right.
yeah.
So what I'm saying is, if you're bringing the sidewalk in on the right-hand side up to that area, like up to look over, then you'd have to cross over to the other side on here. That curve, I live in front of a curve. You don't want to cross by a curve because
Right.
you will, it's a big risk, especially with children and animals and older people that, you know, maybe have some problems with, you know, mobility. You have to be really careful where you put those crosswalks and
Yep.
where you end one and start another.
Yep.
I don't know if, like, in front of that shopping center, if there's enough room to put a sidewalk. I mean, these are all things that you have to.
Yeah, those are things that there is a room for a sidewalk in front of the shopping center, but I think that there's actually a lot of room there, but
You might not need your
But a
sidewalk
lot- yeah.
to look over.
a lot of this is,
Over before that.
yeah. I mean, a lot of this has actually been looked at already.
Uh-huh.
So we'd start with that and then see where the challenges are with what's been discovered. Do you have anything you, yeah? you-
So back in 2014, there was a engineering mock-up for the LMT had done. And
Here it is, right here, actually.
and they spent, you know, $100,000 putting the engineering documents together and actually went out for a grant to try and get their section paved, going as far as they could. So basically split half and half, it's almost identically half and half. And the idea was to put it on basically the right side. They said there was enough room on the right side based on right of way and the sizing of it to do a curve where if a car comes in, they're not paying attention or they're, you know, on their phone or whatever, they're at least hitting a curve instead of a pedestrian. But it was actually on the right side the whole way down and connecting that sidewalk where you have where the sidewalk ends or the green comes in, connecting there. And then the crosswalk from University being kind of midway down the hill, which maybe means you have to lower the speed limit coming down the hill. But otherwise, you know, it would be right in the middle of it, so there's plenty of room on both sides, good sight lines, to at least see someone crossing, and they're not crossing on a curb. Because there's a crosswalk at the other side of the buildings there, you know, right by.
Yeah, no, I know.
Where your walk comes in,
Right,
yeah.
it's past the curve, though.
Yeah,
That's what I'm
exactly.
saying. It
So
has
those
to
would
be
the
past the
two
curve.
kind of thing, and just staying on the right side. And we were talking about maybe do the left side, but there's the drainage, I don't know if you saw the drainage.
Yeah.
There's a drainage that comes through that causes complications with doing sidewalk on the left. So that, you know, there's not a great answer on either side, but it seems doable.
And if you put in a sidewalk, you have to put curbing in, correct?
Yeah.
So-
Well, there's the existing sidewalks are already on the right side where they link
Yeah.
up, whereas on the left side, I mean that like landing at Breese is just a landing. There's not an actual sidewalk there in front of the Episcopal Church there.
And we don't have a picture of it, but what comes down is a multi-use path that ends at University. So,
Right.
you know, past University?
Yeah, it's 100 yards past it.
A little past it, right?
Doesn't it end randomly, like in the middle
Just-
between University?
it's whatever
and
the
Sandy
builder
Line?
was
Just at the
required.
Property line,
Yeah.
it just ends.
Yeah, it's right where the, you know, the big fenced-in property there.
Yep.
is. The guy that owns all the, yeah.
Yep.
It's right
So there's the potential to end that at some point and then cross or whatever, you know.
So you wouldn't cross, you'd stay on the right. I think when we,
Oh, that's on the left, that multi-use path.
No, this is on the
On
right.
the right, which way are you going?
This is on the south side. So if you're coming into the borough, it's on the right. In this photo, it's on the right.
But the path that's, no, but the one further up in Lower Makefield.
There's one that crosses on the left, which is the University Drive side that ends
Right.
right at the, you know, entrance to University.
Exactly, that's the one,
And
right.
there's one on the right that goes another 100 yards down.
Oh, I see what you're saying,
That would
right,
be the one that
right.
connects with
Got
the-
it, yeah.
I think my memory of exploring this project on the north side, the cost skyrocketed with retaining wall requirements to kind of cut into that. It's not just cutting the brush back, they'd have to actually cut into the hill and cut
Right.
way back because they have to build enough retaining wall to hold it, and that made the cost exorbitant on that side at the time.
Little drainage.
Yeah.
There's a drainage like halfway
Yeah,
halfway
yeah.
down that causes
Yep.
problems. And then the catch on the right side is look over and the angle at which look over comes in. And you have to keep it to a certain degree, and under a certain degree because of ADA, you can have wheelchairs falling over.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
It's very steep.
But even if we had to have a crossing and another crossing, it wouldn't be the end of the world either. You know, if that's the only way to do it. But we'd try to find a better.
I think we might have to put in some retaining walls on either side of Lookover because even that
That's-
photo where the sidewalk ends in the greenery, I mean, the reason why it ends is because, I mean, you run into land.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, if we
So
paved
anyway,
up that.
I don't want to get too lost in this.
Yeah,
one.
yeah,
Obviously,
sorry.
it's complex, but it's not unsolvable. And I think that with enough just energy here, we can make it happen. But we've got to be solution oriented. All right. It's a little bit more shots, and you were talking about this
There we go,
drainage.
yep.
Yeah. But you can go on this side of the drainage.
That's actually me. I set up a tripod. It's not me.
All right. And that's one picture of a couple of kids walking, 4 kids.
Yeah, 4.
And that's the thing, is people will do it anyway.
Right.
That brings up a great point, because I only saw 2, so when you're not wearing reflective clothing,
Yeah.
and this has happened within my own family, that's pretty dangerous.
Yeah. And they're just walking. You see, skateboarding and all sorts of stuff.
Yes.
Okay, we're going to move into goal number 2. Now, this one has overlap with public safety. And so what I'm thinking here is that Public Works can work with public safety to coordinate different parts of this, because there's a part of crossings that has to do with the planning, the design, and the implementation and best practices of actually designing crosswalks. And I think that is more of a Public Works function. And there's going to be some overlap, and I think that's great. Let's work together and share resources on that. I called it a BOGO, or a twofer, because well-designed crosswalks also calm traffic. So you get a bonus, and that may be a way to work around, Chief, some of what you said about the having to do with these studies. Because the crosswalks, well, let me just show you one thing here. This is kind of interesting when you talk about speeds. So if a pedestrian is hit at 20 miles per hour, they have a 5% fatality rate. At 30 miles an hour, they have a 45% fatality rate. And at 40 miles an hour, it's an 85% fatality rate. So it's a huge difference. And the reason I point it out is because the design of the infrastructure in our little 1 square mile borough is what is going to keep the speeds down. We can't expect, with all due respect to the police department, they can't control the speed that everyone drives. And on North Main Street, for example, I know by the time they're able to time people, because we have this limitation on radar in Pennsylvania, boroughs, by the time they can time people and find an opportunity to catch someone for speeding, they're often going above 40. So they're above this zone. They may be going, like 45 or something, which is about 45 is 80% higher than the speed limit. So it's 180% of the speed limit. So what can we do to create structural ways to slow traffic down as a first defense, with enforcement being a later defense? And then that's where crosswalks can fit into this. Now, there's this thing called the PennDOT adopted this federal program called the STEP program. And the federal program actually has 7 points. PennDOT adopted 6 of the points, but the 6 points for their crosswalk best practices are rectangular rapid flashing beacons, leading pedestrian intervals. Now, a side note on that, we actually have one of those that was requested for Main and Afton, and that was part of the original plan for the intersection. When the engineers switched from Liz Coletti to Patrick Foley, that got lost. And we brought it back up with Pat, and it's still sort of in the conversation there. Council approved it, and it's just a matter of reprogramming. What that does is the light stays red for a moment, for a few seconds, to give pedestrians time to get into the crosswalk so they can be visible, and then the light turns green. And that is shown to reduce vehicle to pedestrian collisions. Crosswalk visibility enhancements. Another one that's interesting is raised crosswalks. And this is interesting because a raised crosswalk allows you to slow traffic down. It's not like a speed bump. You've probably seen them, but it makes the cars pay more attention, and it does invariably slow down traffic. And you can have a sign, raised crosswalk. It's part of the crosswalk sign. Pedestrian crossing refuge islands. The one place that might be interesting to explore is the Dolington spot. And road diets, which is probably not applicable to the borough, but that's for creating ways to, maybe if you have like a 4-lane road where you create a turn lane and 2 of the lanes and a straight lane. But anyway, so these are steps that PennDOT actually wants. That's my point. So we could actually review existing crosswalks and find out more about this program and see which of these steps would be applicable to existing crosswalks and create standard for future designs. And then there are grants we can apply to that are specifically for upgrading existing infrastructure. We could use grants like that to pay for that. Okay.
I've seen that rectangular rapid flashing beacon.
That is like
Seen them down in St. Augustine.
St. Augustine. I think Princeton has some of those, but it's like solar powered. You press it.
You know, as you're driving down the road, all of a sudden you see flashing,
Yeah.
and when you're driving, you're like, "Ooh, like what's happening?"
Or is
You know?
that where you can have like the push to cross where a pedestrian can hit the
Yes.
button? Like
Hit
say
the
for
button.
example at Penn Valley and Afton where there's no light and where somebody was just hit recently, we could install those there.
Yeah, you can install them in crosswalks and they're solar powered, so you don't need electricity. And
Awesome.
when they push it, it creates that
Yep.
like strobe effect.
And people pay attention. I mean, I've even noticed on North Main at Cold Spring now. I mean, cars on Main Street when I was out taking these photos. I mean, cars came to a complete stop when I wasn't even ready to cross, and I had to be like, no, keep going. Whereas
Yeah.
they don't really do that even at like Main and College. I often
It is
have to wait
interesting.
to cross.
I noticed the exact same thing, how that North Main, the new
Right, 'cause
one.
we have a giant yellow sign with an outline of a person on
Right.
it now, and it
Right.
really does work.
Yeah. So we want to we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can apply existing knowledge, and the fact that PennDOT has adopted it, we're essentially carrying out what they want.
This is interesting. I was just
now-
reading off of the U.S. Department of Transportation site. They're talking about our RFBs, and it says that it can increase motorist yielding rates up to 98%, depending on the actual speed.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, a lot of these things are not expensive, relatively speaking, and super effective. So we're just looking to adopt what other people have figured out. This turn, okay, so we redid this intersection. It's better than it was, but it still has problems. And this turn is one of the issues. Anyone who's crossed from here to here knows the feeling of kind of
Yeah.
walking out to here and looking over your shoulder to see if anyone's coming. And
Pedestrians would have had a walk signal there when that photo was taken.
right, and that this is, you see, that car doesn't see them until that stroller is in the
Right.
path.
Blind spot for the driver.
It's a blind spot, and we know that's a problem. It's the configuration of it. But one idea was there is a possibility of doing a raised, maybe even a decorative raised crosswalk on the whole thing. Another possibility, but it requires a study, is doing when you push to cross, which is not very often, all the lights are red
Right.
at the same time for the pedestrian crossing.
Now, is that different than LPI, where all the
That's
lights
different.
are red?
LPI just gives you a couple of seconds, and LPI, PennDOT was only willing to do it from on the, I think it's on the off of Main. I actually don't remember, on one of the directions, but not the other.
Is there still the possibility to have that done since it was
Yeah, no, it's-
approved,
it's in-
without
it's-
having to do a whole study?
No, that's already in the plan. It just wasn't implemented when the signaling was done.
Just needs to be
It literally slipped off the radar.
So there's no new infrastructure. You just have to resynchronize the lights.
It's a programmable box. It has to be programmed to do it.
So what happened with the other corner by the contact where there's not actually enough room for a person in a wheelchair to maneuver around those poles?
Yeah, that was just a design. I don't know. That's how it's challenging, but is that true though? Because it's supposed to meet ADA standards.
Person with a wheelchair tell me that they
Yeah,
couldn't really get around.
it's tight, but I think it met the code. I remember it was. I wasn't on council that whole time when that was looked at, but I remember that was a tight spot. But I mean, it's a challenging.
Also like the angle of that, it's
Yeah.
not like a level, like they're
It's
trying
not,
to
it's
for
steep.
leveling. Yeah.
It's steep right
I mean, this would never be designed like this today, but at the same time, it wouldn't be a historic district either, and it wouldn't have the charm it has. So, we have to work around those kinds of problems. And this is crossing on, this was actually taken from a video. This car did not yield to that pedestrian, who happens to be my wife, who was testing it out. That's the one you were just talking about. They don't
Yeah.
yield there. I don't know what that is.
I've waited in the middle of the crosswalk because one car yielded to me and then the other one didn't. I'm the guy throwing up my hands like this and making faces at them.
This one's interesting because we actually
You might be
paid
as well.
to have decorative crosswalks on
And notice
all
we even
four?
have that yellow sign there. It's just for some reason it's not as visible on North Main as the one on North Main
So
Street.
one of the things we're gonna clarify, but that the best practice is to put that sign here, not there where nobody sees it. When you put it here, the cars respond to it a lot more than there, but that's,
I think the fire company had a challenge with that.
yeah, but,
Yeah, they
Could they?
but maybe it has to be further back, because you can put them
Getting right
here.
over.
The one by your house, nobody stops for anyway. Yeah. Nobody stops.
You could.
I have
put
more
them here.
success with people
You don't have to
stopping
put
down
them
there
like
than this
there.
intersection for some reason is.
There's some, we have to get the standard, but you can put them quite a bit before, and then it's part of the straightaway.
My 84-year-old dad has to cross here.
Yeah.
I missed like half of what everyone's saying.
Anyway, that's something to look at and determine. What is our standard for that? How do we maintain these crosswalks? What material do you use to paint them? What I was saying is that this was actually a decorative crosswalk, and then the road was repaved. We paid for the decorative crosswalk. The road was repaved, and it was lost and never replaced.
Oh, so are you,
But I think they're supposed to replace what they destroyed, no?
Because we did it, PennDOT did not do it.
Oh.
Doing it on our own and paying for it.
Right.
PennDOT says we are not putting it back, we put it back to the way we had it.
So maybe we have to put it, with one of the standards, that's the PennDOT STEP program, and then they'll put that back. But, okay. This is a problematic one.
Yes.
So this angle design causes the pedestrian to be in this crosswalk for much longer than they need to be. This could have gone straight to here, where there's actually an existing path, or it could be on this side. You'd have to do something on the landing. But the fact that it goes angled like this, actually, the 11-year-old girl was hit on that crosswalk. And you can see how easy it is to get hit because there's actually a person on the other side of that.
yeah.
Person can't see the
Oh,
traffic
there's a
coming.
person standing there in that photo that
Right.
the driver can't see.
There is a real person. And there she is.
Oh,
Is that your wife again?
She
Why do you
might
keep
very well be.
way?
She wanted she's a bit of a stunt woman. And, yeah. So we want Public Works to work together, public safety on this, to create an inventory of what we have, what crosswalks we have, where we think we need crosswalks, so we don't have them. For example, recently there was conversation about, is there a crosswalk needed going to, what's the name of the driveway for Yardley Walk?
Wayfaring.
Wayfaring Lane. So that was originally designed without a crosswalk. There's actually a sign there that says person / which I'm not a fan of, but people use it anyway. The idea that you could make all the pedestrians go one way and all the cars go another, in practice doesn't work out. People use it anyway. So if people are going to use it anyway, do you want them to cross without a crossing or with a crossing? So that's a question. And also, as you get closer to town, more crossings might help to kind of slow the traffic a bit. And so the idea is to inventory, figure out design standards, raise money to get it done, of which there's special money for crosswalks, implement and maintain those changes. And the final thing,
Sorry. Can I just ask
Is-
a quick question on
yes.
the crosswalks? The one that you showed us, and unfortunately, the little girl was hit. Since that's the state highway and we'd have to work with PennDOT, what process is there to get that remedied?
I asked our engineer about that one, and he had, the last I heard, it was a while back, he was going to look to see if PennDOT would just change it.
Okay.
This is really not meeting
No, it's
standards.
very dangerous.
or if we were going to go to PennDOT on crosswalks, would there be any value in addition to that one, combining possibly additional crosswalks on Main Street into the same package, or does
Possibly, yeah, because they have a lot of grants I've seen that say like upgrade of.
right? And especially if they're going to require a study, we might as well have. I would think
Yeah.
we could get because so one thing I noticed as I was walking around town, down closer to where you're at. Of course, there's the crossing at the Commons. There's no crosswalk there. No, I'm saying there should be one there.
Oh, yeah, there should be.
Well, but then what I also noticed was on Main Street at Van Horn and at South Street, there are the signs, if you're on the sidewalk, of a person and an X.
Right.
And they want you to go down to Letchworth. But
Right.
two things. One, human nature, people aren't going to go all the way down to Letchworth to then cross the street and go
Right.
back. Here's another issue as well. That Main Street crosswalk at Letchworth, that's where a building juts out into the sidewalk and it's a foot wide. That doesn't meet ADA standards. Whereas if we actually put a crosswalk in at Van Horn, I actually saw it. The curb is actually, there's barely any curb there. It's an inch tall. We could easily put in an ADA accessible, and then you're able to cross Main Street safely. And then by having, like, let's say we put 3 crosswalks all in a row, that's a traffic calming device in and of itself because I'm
Right,
just thinking
right.
if there's a possibility of combining all that
Yeah.
into one kind of envelope with PennDOT.
I think the first step is we need a full inventory accounting of all of these things because and I'm only highlighting the things that we're focused on, but there's stuff like this all over the place. And, but I would focus obviously on anything Main Street is a hot spot. Okay, so where were we? Okay. Number 3, this can be a quick one. It's just about maximizing existing and potential open space for sustainability, beauty of the area, enjoyment of residents. Example is the Pico lot, which is going to be the Yardley trailhead for DNL, actually the DNL State Park. We want to, once it's finally acquired, raise funds to do things like planting wildflowers for visual appeal, attract pollinators, maybe put some benches or picnic table or something like that there. We've had the idea of bicycle repair stand with tools. Recently, I saw a grant was awarded for that.
Wow.
And those little stands with like a pump and all those things you need if you have the chain falls off or
Which
whatever.
also gives us the opportunity to solicit places like the bike shop to sponsor
Correct.
other things, and I think it's good for business as well.
Good for business, and it's good to be able to have an access point to the state park.
Absolutely.
Okay, and then that's how it looks like. I really recommend, if you haven't been around to all these sites, to just go around town and see them in person. It's hard to get a sense from pictures. Second thing is the Riverwalk. So we started this project thanks to the
You're talking about the American Water Foundation grant?
correct, the American Water Foundation, which is administered through the Spearhead Earth
Correct.
group. And this, we decided to first we're going to use it on the Pico lot. We decided to redirect it to the river because Yardley Borough doesn't have direct access to the Delaware River, which is amazing because it's one of our greatest assets. And so this is the first step. There are multiple properties along the river. So it is in the comprehensive plan, but I think you want to re-look at that and figure out how to maximize the use of that beautiful spot because the borough owns several properties. There's one in the middle there, it needs a comprehensive plan. But this first step is just to, and I'll show you, this is what it looks like now. There have been Eagle Scout projects there in the past, and people have tried to make use of it, but that's not very good. That's not very good.
No,
That's
belongs-
our property, borough property.
All the way down the river. Is there a lot?
Those are private, but there are a few that are borough properties, and then there are private properties as well.
Basically, at the ends of the streets where it forms a T intersection with Delaware, that little strip of land is owned by the borough because there's no house directly across the street.
If you look at the Bucks, the Bucks County map, parcel map system, you can go in there and you can see the owners of the parcels. So we're going to work on cleaning this up as part of
Could you
that
give us a
grant.
quick update?
Yeah.
If you don't
Sure,
mind.
yeah, please.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Could you go back to the original picture that you brought up? So yesterday, thank you. Yesterday, and this brings another point, not for discussion, but just pleases me, is that we're starting to get cooperation between different committees. And yesterday, the Shade Tree Committee had agreed to meet myself and Spearhead Earth, Jarrett, different spelling. I know he. And we walked the site, and it was really informational and useful, and will help guide us in how to, build out that proposal that is for completing the information that's needed for the 6-month mark for that grant. One of the things I like to point out that we discussed is right there, the steps. There's no hand railing. So that's one of the things that we discussed in yesterday's, putting some money towards a railing. Second thing is, if we're not going to be using the, it's hard to see in this picture, but that actually is misleading the way it looks, because it actually is not flat. There's about, was it 15 feet or so, it goes back in that direction. If we want to kind of keep people from entering that part, we could have some natural barriers, like shrubbery or whatever. Then one concern is that tree. The arborist pointed out that that tree needs some trimming, or I don't know the technical word for it. But he suggested cutting off part of the upper end of the trunk because of you don't want pieces of dead branches and trunk falling on people.
So is that tree considered, we were thinking about what
The
we were
tree
wondering
is
if it has to be
safe
removed.
for
It doesn't
now.
have to be removed. Okay, that's good.
He recommended that we don't remove it. Well, first of all, it's not dead, and it's providing shade.
Right.
If it falls, his opinion is it will fall towards the river, but if we take the precautions of cutting off parts of the, those branches and parts of the trunk, it'll be safe, or we can't promise 100%.
The tree stabilizes the bank.
Yes, but that's another part of the conversation. The other part of the conversation is that the Shade Tree Committee has agreed, because they told me that they don't give away all the trees that they're allocated, I guess, from PHS, if that's correct, Pennsylvania Horticultural Society, if I'm not mistaken. So in any case, they've agreed to help us with more tree plantings and other, shrubbery and other types of flowers and so forth. What you may not see you can't see from this picture, and I don't know if your other pictures show it, but at the top, on the street side, there was discussion of a wildflower display, not just to make it look pretty, but also another level of protecting the public from stepping out onto the street mistakenly. Finally, just to talk about the erosion, and there is erosion there, and there's no plants or flowers that they could recommend that would necessarily tolerate a flood, but they can make some recommendations to hedge our bets, if you will, because any flood or flooding conditions, because that's pretty low, will take its toll on, the plants and so forth. But the most important takeaway, I thought, is maintenance and continued maintenance. Now, I have spoken to the American Legion commander, Ted Smith. He's totally behind this. They are responsible, they've made themselves responsible for the upper portion, as you can see where the flags are and where Mayor does his speeches for, the various veterans events. And that's great, because we don't have to worry about that. But anything down below, he said, go for it. Make it look beautiful. Give the community access. Was there any questions or anyone have questions about that?
Is this the site that Project Earth is working on?
Well, that's what we're talking about, yes.
Spearhead Earth. Yeah, I just am impressed that this was a $10,000 grant leveraged through Spearhead Earth using our committees. And there's, that's not a lot of money to do something like this. And it's pretty, all the things you're talking about just in itself is pretty substantial.
But we can actually get free trees, shrubberies,
Right.
So we can leverage all these connections that we have and actually make $10,000 into a multiple of something, which I think is what we need to do. And finally, I would just say, though it hasn't happened yet, liaison for the Environmental Advisory Committee, and I said that I think that even if they can't contribute to the project directly, I thought it's important to contribute to the educational part of it and work with Spearhead Earth, in fact, to talk about the environmental impact, because one of the other components of this and the spirit of the grant is to clean up plastic or trash along the river, where, side of, on the river there, because you can't see it, but there's trash and there's plastic and.
It starts to attract it.
And we want to give the best impression of our community, and that's not, having beer cans and plastic bottles and so forth.
Well, great.
Going on the river to do that.
They could go all the way down. In fact, if you go there, you can see that it's very shallow there. So
I don't know if any of those other pictures.
it's hard to see in those pictures.
Yeah, I
But
really was just
yesterday,
showing the
I could
brush.
see down to the river bed at that, right at the bottom.
Yeah. Anyway, just to start, this is not even the whole, this is really just kind of scratch the surface, and it's amazing. We'll see what we can accomplish with that.
Absolutely.
So that is the River Walk, what we're calling the River Walk, although it's not really a walk, but, it's something. Other opportunities, they come up occasionally. And when there's an opportunity to acquire property, it's a rare thing in the borough, being so tiny and so developed. And, if we have a chance to preserve something, I think we should do it. And it, stays for generations and obviously prevents floodplain development. There's one that's a possibility that I've been working on. I can't really share more about it, but there's one in the works that might work out. And I think that's it for me. Any questions that I didn't get to?
No, do you feel like you have your clear action items? I know on the sidewalk front, we're working on North Main, we have a meeting with Lower Makefield. But for the other items, you have a path forward?
Well, the first path is just to have alignment from council that you're good with this direction, and then the committee will, kind of chunk it down into the next steps.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to focus on things. If we want to focus on crosswalks, let's put all our energy on that, and instead of doing this, that, and everything.
Well, this actually is excluding a lot of things that are,
Sure.
so yeah. But, I think we're going to have to work on multiple directions just because of the way the grants are. And one year you get this one year you get that one. I think the key is to have what we want figured out and drawn up enough to be able to apply for grants and to get that process to be efficient. And then we can get good at applying for grants. And as they come in the direction that we want, we do those projects.
Thanks for putting
Yeah.
the presentation together. It was nice to have visuals.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks.
All right. I will entertain a motion to adjourn unless there's anything else.
So moved.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Meeting adjourned at 9:08. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.